As summer winds down and temperatures cool off, Colorado's big game seasons are about to heat up. And if you plan to hunt this fall, you have plenty of reasons to look forward to opening day. Wildlife biologists, in general, predict good hunting conditions across most of the state. Abundant elk herds, excellent numbers of buck deer, and a record pronghorn population have set the stage for what could be another good year for Colorado hunters.
The basic prediction, again, it sounds like a broken record, but because we do have the most abundant elk herd of anywhere in the country, and our deer population is one of the largest deer herds in the country, the expectation is for a very good hunting season this year. We're excited about it. It's just about to start, and pretty much it's all ready to go. We just need to get to opening days. Our current statewide deer population estimate is 419,000. That's down significantly and down from where we would prefer it is. It was around 600,000 in 2005. We have had some declines in western Colorado, the far western tier of the state, which are our largest herds. And those herds are below our population objectives, and they're not where we want those herds to be. That said, the mule deer populations in the central and northern mountains of Colorado are doing very well, and the deer herds on the plains are stable. So deer hunters in Colorado, if you're fortunate enough to have a license, can expect a very good deer season. Our success rates are average annually about 50%. One thing's for sure, we have a lot of bucks in Colorado right now. Last year the post-hunt buck-doe ratio was 35 bucks per 100 does, which is as high or higher than it's ever been in Colorado. So if you're fortunate enough to have a limited buck license, you can expect the bucks are for sure out there, and you can also hope for a little bit of snow to essentially make them a little bit easier to find and trigger the migration. Elk populations are stable in Colorado at around 278,000. Our elk population peaked at 305,000 in 2001. We brought that herd down intentionally to keep it in line with what the habitat could support and minimize conflicts with agricultural producers. And then we now have been on about a 12-year reduction in limited cow elk licenses to maintain that elk herd right about where we are as we hit population objective in many of those herds. So to maintain those elk populations, we're reducing cow licenses, but the bull licenses in second and third season and archery are still over-the-counter unlimited in most of those herds. Our success rates are for all rifle seasons are pretty consistently running about 20%. If you get online and look at our big game statistics, you can see unit by unit comparisons and season by season comparisons, but we have the most abundant elk population in the country, and they're out there. They're not always easy to find, but if people hunt hard, they're going to have good elk hunting. Our pronghorn populations on the eastern plains are doing very well. In fact, our current population estimate statewide of 81,000 is the all-time record for Colorado. So it should be a good year for pronghorn hunters, especially on the plains. Well, if you're fortunate enough to have a moose license, you're probably still floating around. It's our most difficult to draw. A bull moose is our most difficult to draw license in Colorado. We had 415 licenses, and we had somewhere on the order of 22,000 applicants for those. So if you're fortunate enough to have a license, you can expect excellent moose hunting. Our moose populations are very healthy, something that many other states are envious of, as moose herds have suffered some declines in more northern states. Our moose herds are still expanding, pioneering new habitat, and our current population estimate is 3,000 and increasing. We've gone from 39 hunted units for moose to 60 since 2013. So we're increasing the number of licenses on moose and increasing the number of units, not only for hunter opportunity, but to make sure that we keep moose populations in line with what the habitat can support, so we don't suffer declines later as we go past that peak.
In the Northeast region, we've had 4 years of good moisture, and that has resulted in high fawn recruitment, or at least average to above average fawn recruitment and calf recruitment. So we're at objective as far as population numbers for our big game herds, or even over objective in a couple of cases. So there's good opportunity. The one thing in the Northeast region hunters should keep in mind is that almost all big game licenses are limited. And so you would have had to apply in order to get a license, or you might get lucky and find some on the leftover list. The only exception to that is elk and Game Management Unit 38. There still is some over-the-counter second and third rifle season in archery, but all others, even for elk, are limited. Buck-doe ratios are all solid and at objective in the Northeast region, and you're going to see ranges probably on hunting areas in anywhere from 25 to 35 bucks per 100 does. In the Northeast region, one tip for hunters is because of how close the Northeast region is to the large population areas like Denver, Boulder, Longmont, Loveland, all the way through Fort Collins, if hunters can find time to hunt in the middle of the week, on the weekdays, say Tuesday through Thursday, it's a great opportunity to get out there and get a lot of time in the mountains by yourself too, or with a lot less folks out there.
Hunting in the Southwest this fall actually should be pretty good, I think. I mean, our populations have been at objective and below objective for some of our populations, but that being said, we've adjusted license numbers to reflect that. Bull licenses, a lot of them are over the counter. That's something that doesn't change, but we've reduced a lot of cow licenses. We don't have many doe licenses across Southwest Colorado, so we've taken some measures to try to help grow populations to get to those objectives we're shooting for. But the numbers, I mean, that we've allocated license for, I mean, the hunting success should be pretty good for those guys that have licenses this year. Success last year wasn't great. It was a super mild fall last fall, so success for deer and elk was down a little bit, and actually I think that could probably help for some hunter success this year. For the most part, I don't think we're below objective on too many of our herds on buck-doe ratios, but that means that essentially we're running from about 30 to 35 buck per 100 doe across most of our Southwest deer populations. Winter conditions this last fall across the Southwest were really pretty mild, other than in Gunnison Basin. Gunnison Basin, the way the conditions aligned, got a lot of snow. We did see pretty heavy snows across all of our mountains in the Southwest. Valleys got it for a little bit, but then we warmed up everywhere other than Gunnison, and just that valley holds the temperatures, keeps the temperatures low, and that snow builds up. So the elk and deer were stacked right on top of each other and right along Highway 50. So that's what kind of instigated a lot of the baiting operation that we had to do, was kind of just try to keep them off the highway because of such heavy snow depth. We did experience some deer mortality, in particular in the Gunnison Basin. We have a deer monitoring study established in the Gunnison Basin, so our biologist Kevin Bleck was able to document. And our fawn survival was low. I mean, I think it estimated about 16%, which is really low. Doe survival, though, really wasn't too bad. It was a little bit below average for the winter. Buck survival, we're not monitoring collars, but generally those adult animals tend to carry over the winters better. May not be the same as high of a buck-doe ratio as we saw last year, but overall adult animals seem like they fared okay. Black bear hunting in the Southwest region actually is probably going to mean for some above average success rate this year. We've had, and part of that is because we've had some mass failures. We've lost most of our acorn crops. All the oak brush got frosted out in May. A lot of our berries, and really most of our berries across the Southwest did as well. What that means is that bears are going to be really active trying to find forage come this fall, is they're trying to bulk up for the winter, and they're going to be mobile. So those years where the bears are having to be more mobile to find forage, hunter success generally goes up. So it'd be a good year. If you've got a bear tag, should be a great year to fill a tag. And yeah, also picking up those over-the-counter with the cap licenses or over-the-counter licenses during the rifle seasons may be a better year to pick up those licenses and fill a bear tag.
Over the last number of years, we've had really good summer moisture, which for pronghorn often means that we have really good production on our pronghorn herds in the southeast, and so this year we're going into the fall with some of the highest pronghorn numbers that we've had in some time across many of the areas in southeast Colorado. And so I think what hunters can expect are pretty decent numbers of pronghorn on the landscape, and so it's certainly important in the southeast region because we have pretty limited public lands that hunters reach out and communicate with landowners, find places to get access well in advance of the season so that they can have a really good experience out there. So our deer populations have been coming up over the last number of years down here in the southeast region, and that's not only in just total numbers of deer, but also in the number of bucks. Our buck-to-doe ratios come up, and that includes areas west of I-25 down here in the southeast, but then also on the eastern plains, many of our herds that are dominated by white-tailed deer. We've seen good increases in animals, and then also that increase in the buck-to-doe ratio over the last number of years. Generally, elk populations in the southeast region have been pretty stable over the last number of years, and that translates into pretty similar conditions to what hunters have seen in the past down here. We've pretty much maintained about the same number of elk licenses, so in general I think it's going to be pretty similar to what folks have seen in the past. It was kind of an interesting year as it relates to just moisture conditions. We had kind of wet, cold, kind of freezing type temperatures early on in the season, and so that had an impact on many of the common bear foods, some of the most important bear foods that we see, you know, oak brush and chokecherry. And so in general, in those types of years, we see more bear movements, and so that can certainly increase the odds of encountering a bear out on the landscape because they move more. And so I think bear hunting conditions could be really good. This fall, we've started a pilot project to look at opening up some of our walk-in access acres to big game hunting opportunities. So right now we have about 32,000 acres in the southeast, and it's a southeast region only pilot. It's over a number of different GMUs in southeast Colorado, and I just suggest that folks that might be interested look and get themselves a walk-in hunting atlas and see what properties are available for that type of hunting and which GMUs it's available. It might provide some additional opportunities that we haven't had in the past.
In the Northwest region, I think hunters should be able to expect a very productive season. We have both deer and elk widely distributed across the region, and numbers are about where we'd like to see them for elk in most units, and are beginning to creep up again for deer. You know, for elk, we're about at objective in most of the units in the region. There are a couple of herds south of I-70 where we have dropped licenses further in the last couple of years. They're still within the objective range, but we're concerned about how low those elk herds have gotten. We're not seeing the calf production we would like to see. And so on the Grand Mesa this year, in the Frying Pan and Vail Valley areas, we've reduced cow license numbers pretty substantially. That said, the units along the northern tier within the Colorado are very productive, and we've increased licenses there to try to stay on top of those herds, because with a year or two of poor harvest, they could start to exceed the objective where we'd like to keep them. With antelope, it's kind of a mixed bag. Our antelope up along the Wyoming line did take some pretty severe hits last winter, and so distribution will be a little different this year than hunters might be expecting from previous years. But they didn't, numbers don't seem to be substantially reduced, and I think antelope hunters will be able to find a good number of antelope in most of the units. We do expect that the size of antelope bucks will be reduced from what it's been in past years because of those heavy winter conditions. Nutritionally, they had a much tougher time, and that's often reflected in horn growth for antelope. With deer, there's been a lot of talk over the last few years about the West Slope mule deer strategy. The deer across many areas of the West Slope have not performed the way we would like them to. Mule deer herds are not where we'd like to see them in most areas of the Northwest region. Many of our herds are below objective numerically, so we don't have the number of deer in those units we would like to have. Paradoxically, in every herd unit in the Northwest region, our buck ratios are above the long-term objectives. We don't have a single deer herd in the region where the buck ratio is not above our long-term objective. And in many cases, we're up in the 35 to 45 bucks per 100 doe range for deer. Couple that then with fairly poor hunting conditions, hot, dry seasons the last 2 years, and we've not had the harvest we expected either. And so there are some tremendous opportunities for deer hunters in this coming season in the Northwest region. You know, the last 2 winters, we've had pretty severe winter conditions through the month of February, or at least into the middle of the month of February, for both deer and elk, and to some degree antelope, in several units along the northern portion of the northwest quarter of the state. That's resulted in some substantial loss of fawns in those areas, but not much adult mortality. And so in many of those places, and especially for bucks, with buck ratios being above our long-term objective, we've kept licenses high for buck deer, and in some units we've increased licenses even where we had substantial winter mortality, to try to provide hunters the opportunity to harvest those deer before the hard winter comes along and takes them out. You know, really the effect with winters is not so much the year of the winter itself, unless it's a severe winter like 1983-84 was, where we lost 30 to 40% of the adult female deer and 50% or more of the bucks. A horrible winter, and we've not seen anything like that since then. Otherwise, the real effects of a hard winter are felt 2 or 3 years down the road, as the fawns that would have been 2-year-old, 3-year-old bucks are just not there. And in these last 2 winters in sub-herd units, we've lost a significant part of an age class that won't be present 2 years from now. So we've got glorious hunting conditions right now. Those will not be as good a couple years from now as we work through this dip caused by the last 2 winters. And then I expect we'll see buck quality begin to increase again after that time.
Hunting licenses are still available for the 2017 big game seasons. Over-the-counter elk and bear licenses are available at statewide license agents and online. Be sure to check the leftover license list for limited tags that remain for all seasons and species. Chronic wasting disease testing is mandatory this fall for deer hunters in some game management units. All rifle season buck hunters who harvest a buck in these GMUs are required to submit their deer head or have a CWD sample taken. Additionally, all deer hunters in GMU 33 who harvest a deer of either sex must submit their deer for testing. Colorado Parks and Wildlife thanks you for hunting Colorado. Your license fees support wildlife conservation programs for both game and non-game species. We appreciate your continued support and encourage you to have a safe and successful hunting season. For more information about the 2017 big game seasons and to see a list of additional hunting resources, please visit Colorado Parks and Wildlife's webpage.